So, Rosie, I'll just briefly introduce you. Many of you know her already. She's the principal conservation biologist at the Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica Mountains, where she has served bravely and competently and really well for many, many years. She can tell you how many. And so this evening, she's going to give us an update on the Topanga Lagoon Restoration Project. So, Rosie, do you want to share your screen and
Yes, here we go. So let's make sure that you can see everything. Is that coming through? Are we good?
Yeah, looks good to me.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight to join this conversation. This has been a project that's been a long time in the gestation period. So I'm excited to sort of share where we are at the moment. Before I get started, I did want to acknowledge that Topanga and the Topanga Creek watershed, in fact, much of the Los Angeles basin, are the ancestral lands of the Gabrielino Tongva. And I think it's really appropriate to sort of think about how we can take our Western knowledge and our Western worldview and combine that with the indigenous ways of knowing to come up with a way to do the best possible job we can to figure out how we can restore the land here and make this work. It really takes us all. And so in the spirit of collaboration, I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who made this project happen. The landowners involved are state parks, county beaches and harbors, and Caltrans. The RCD is serving as the project manager and fiscal agent. And our funders are the Coastal Conservancy, Fish and Wildlife, the Wildlife Conservation Board, and much of these funds are thanks to our former Assembly member, Richard Bloom, who really has been a champion of this project all along. So just a brief reminder that Topanga is the third largest watershed that drains into the Santa Monica Bay. It kind of looks like the continent of Africa. And what's interesting is that out of all the, 28 or so reptiles and amphibians, as well as the native fishes, Topanga still has everybody who's supposed to be here, and we don't have very many of the invasive critters who aquatically in the water that aren't supposed to be here. Red swamp crayfish is our biggest problem. So this is considered to be a reference watershed within the Santa Monica Mountains, and it's been the source of study for me. I've learned a lot from living here over the past 35 years. But today I'm going to talk to you about this project at the mouth of Topanga Creek watershed, where the creek meets the ocean. And what you can see in this yellow outline is what we're considering to be the project area. And you can see it's state parks on the north of PCH, Caltrans at PCH and Topanga Canyon Boulevard, and beaches and harbors on the ocean side. And the reason there's all these extra little lines going out to Coastline Drive to the east and going north on Topanga Canyon Boulevard further is because when I talk about the alternatives that are under consideration, one of the big issues at Topanga right now is that all the state park businesses and everything in state parks is on septic systems, and as is beaches and harbor. But they've got like an advanced treatment system. State parks does not. Any kind of improvement has to bring the wastewater up to code. So the two options for getting us up to code are either to put in a sewer, line that would connect to the county sewer at Coastline Drive, or to put in seepage pits up in this area north of the project. But the main section that's going to be disturbed to do this project is the 41 acres that's a subset of the 92 acres of the whole project. And this box that you see in the ocean has to do with what do we do with all the fill material that's been placed next to the bridge. So I'll explain that as we go along. But why do we need to do this? There's a lot of reasons, but as you can see in 1876, Topanga Lagoon, all the area that you see that's in green here, this was all wetlands and wetland marsh area. By 1916, some of that had been filled in, but the lagoon was almost 30 acres in area. And just for a point of reference, Malibu Lagoon today is a little over 11 acres. So you can understand why the LA Athletic Club purchased all the land to the north of PCH in the early 1920s, because they had ideas of turning Topanga Lagoon into a small yacht harbor because it was so big. And in this aerial photograph from 1933, you can see the original alignment of Pacific Coast Highway and the original bridge over the lagoon, which was about 250 feet long. And if you look closely, you can see right behind, going up north, you can see the old bridge. This was the original Roosevelt Highway crossing of Topanga Creek, because they went up into the creek rather than try to cross down at the lagoon mouth, which was so dynamic. But this quickly changed in 1933 when Caltrans decided to realign PCH. So they moved it inland. You can see the old alignment of PCH is in the road that we still use that goes down to the lifeguard facility. And if you look, you can see that they've cut all the hillsides surrounding the lagoon. And they cut those hillsides and use that to build up those pads that you see that now surround the much smaller lagoon with a bridge that's only 79 feet wide. So those pads are about 30 feet high, and that's the material that is slated to be placed. If you look where my cursor is, that's about where that box was in the project plan. And what that would do is, by placing this natural sediment here, it will provide nourishment to the beaches that are down east. The reason we're not placing it directly on the beach or adjacent to the mouth of the creek is because the material is coarser and a slightly different color. So it wouldn't look that great on the beach. And people were concerned about that. And we also wanted to make sure that we didn't impact the surf break. So this is where we are today. The current lagoon is less than an acre of the 30 acres it used to be. And so even though we're this representative watershed within the Santa Monica Mountains, and we still have these endangered fishes present, it's not optimal. It's just keeping them going. And so the idea is, how can we do a project that's going to improve conditions for the fish, allow us to recognize and highlight the ancestral lands of the Tongva, and help provide some interpretation about the long stewardship they had of this area. Oops, went the wrong way. What do we do with the Topanga Ranch Motel, which, as you saw in those earlier photos, started out as tent cabins in the 1920s, which were initially built to house the people who were building PCH at that time. State Parks needs to make a plan on what to do with these buildings. And if you look, there's no trails. It's pretty unimproved in terms of visitor services other than you get to the beach. So the idea is to try to figure out how can we do a better job with all of this. And as many of you know, this is a very high fire area. Topanga and PCH is often where the emergency turnarounds are if we have a wildfire in Malibu. And the only helipad that we've got is this fill slope right here on the west side of the lagoon. And the lifeguard facility is over on the east side of the lagoon. So if there's an emergency during the wintertime when the lagoon is connected, the lifeguards can't drive across the beach. And so they have to take whoever's hurt up onto PCH into the traffic and around to get them to the helipad. So we're trying to address all of these issues. Additionally, right now on a normal summer weekend, people just randomly cross the street wherever because they don't want to use the underpass if they even know that the underpass exists. So it's kind of a traffic nightmare and it's a safety nightmare. And parking is a bit of a free-for-all with you never know what's going on in or out. So you put all these pieces together from the, human side, and then you add, and the biological side, and then we get to the coastal erosion problem side, where the lifeguard facility is currently having to be shored up with riprap and sand regularly, and the beach is heavily eroding because of the coastal storm damage. And when we look at the projections for sea level rise, we can see that it's not really too far off in the future that we're looking at losing what beach we have. So with all of these issues, we started, amazingly enough, in 2000, pulling together people to come up with ideas on what should we do? How should we handle this? And we stopped that process in 2004 because state parks at that time decided that they wanted to revisit and renew the Topanga State Park General Plan before they could make any further decisions. So that didn't get completed until 2012, and it took us until 2019 to get the funding in place again to start the process. So over the past 20 years, there have been literally hundreds of people who have sat down, many of you, by the way, have participated in this, and sat down and really thought about how we should do this, what was important. And then we convened a technical advisory committee of all the regulatory agency representatives and coastal restoration experts. And what's fascinating to me is that everybody kind of came up with the same list of priorities. And so those became like the guiding principles for how we were going to think about taking the information that people gave us and turning them into alternatives. So the project goals ended up being to expand and restore the lagoon ecosystem, integrate public access, recreation, and visitor serving needs, and proactively address sea level rise while protecting the existing biological, cultural, and recreational resources. And to say this is a multi-benefit, very complex project doesn't even begin to go there, as I've learned. So with that overarching goal, we set up some specific sort of smaller goals that would allow us to sort of have a metric by which we could, over time, determine whether or not whatever preferred alternative gets implemented, did it work? Is it doing what we hoped it would do? And so those fall into the biological as well as the more visitor service kinds of project goals. And all of those pieces together were what we used. And so the four alternatives that we came up with basically go from no action. What do we if we do nothing? That's the no project alternative. And in fact, in this case, it's also somewhat managed decline because we don't get any benefits for the fishes. We don't get any restoration. The look here is, this is what's known euphemistically as a direct deposit. And a study that we did that we published in 2014, we found that one direct deposit, which is equal to one dirty diaper or one person who decides not to use the restroom, but to just take a crap wherever, when that gets into the ocean, that's sufficient to cause a bacterial exceedance. So these kinds of problems are not going to get addressed if we do nothing. And things will remain pretty much the way they are, and the lifeguard facility will still be at risk, and the helipad won't get fixed. So when we started this process, the Coastal Commission came to us and said, we'd like you to look at this as a holistic thing. So we're going to do a consolidated development permit that looks at all the improvements as a whole. So that's been where we've been working with what are the needs for state parks, what are the needs for Caltrans, what are the needs for beaches and harbors, and how do we get all of those three landowners to come up with a strategy that meets the project goals. So we ended up kind of going with two extremes. The first is to maximize the lagoon. So this would be where we get the maximum ecological benefits. And you can see the bridge would expand from 79 feet to 460 feet. And what this does is it gives us a 200-foot main span with side spans that allow the creek to adjust over time. And what you'll note in all of these drawings is that because of the concern to protect the existing important fish resources, tidewater gobies are federally listed, as are southern steelhead trout, that we are not touching the wetted area. So all the construction of the bridge, all of the activity happens outside and away from, working away from the existing wetted area. And that turned out to be a really great kind of constraint, because what it meant is that we also are retaining all of the native riparian trees that exist in the project area. So very few trees will get lost of the native riparian trees. We will lose a few eucalyptus and tamarisk. But this opening up here pretty much follows the historic alignment of the lagoon, and it gives the creek space to move and migrate over time. By contrast, well, so here you can see this is a plan view, and the blue trail exists. The orange lines are trails that are proposed, and this allows us to connect in a very nice loop. It provides some really nice interpretive opportunities. And all of the parking that we would lose from this area gets relocated to the corner of Topanga and PCH. And this becomes what State Parks is calling the Gateway Corner, which would be sort of like a gateway to the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area and to Topanga State Park, with an interpretive pavilion and some other amenities. The Gateway Corner element is consistent in all three alternatives that are proposed. But the other thing about alternative two is that it increases the towel space, if you will, the amount of area where people can go to the beach and put their towels down and build a sandcastle. It also gives us extra space to install living shoreline features at various places. Those are not included in the designs as yet, but they will be as time goes on. By contrast, alternative 3 kind of goes to the other extreme, and it maximizes protecting the historic resources, which really goes down to the ranch motel. So here's the ranch motel. Most of it gets to stay. We do lose a little bit of it because the bank is failing and there's no way to hold this up. We don't get as much, we still get the west side lagoon restoration. We don't get as much on the east side. And it definitely constrains things and focuses it much more on the human element and human visitor services. So this is kind of the schematic that shows the beach elements and the ranch motel right here. In all of these, I should note that like the Choladas, Wiley's, what is now Rosenthal's, and the feed bin. These are all month-to-month business leases under state, with state parks, and those would all be removed. And the only concession that would remain would be at the location of the Real Inn. And what that will be and who will own it, that's something that will be determined as this goes on. Alternative 4 is somewhere in the middle. And this was the one where we decided, let's think a little outside of the box. What could we do to actually maximize sea level rise resilience? Well, in 1933, only 20 years, or not even 20 years after they built the original PCH, they realized they had to move it inland. So with this, what we're doing is actually moving the alignment of PCH through the project area slightly to the north. So what that does is it crunches down the remaining Topanga Ranch Motel. It expands the beach area and moves it slightly north. The west side remains pretty consistent. But this moves PCH further away from the ocean, and in so doing allows a lot more beach area, which could persist for a longer period of time. So this is kind of the schematic that shows you where the existing alignment of PCH is and the proposed alignment, which would curve a little bit to the north. This one is the most sea level rise, but because we're moving things closer to the hillside here and the hillside over on the west, this alternative would require a significant number of retaining walls and is a little bit more complicated to build. So all three of these alternatives have a bigger, wider lagoon footprint and a bigger, wider bridge that allows the current peak flows that are like a fire hose coming through that narrow 79-foot bridge. And that's the most significant limiting factor for steelhead getting into or out of the lagoon, because they can't swim against that very high level of flow. And all three of these reduce the peak flows and expand the window of time that when the lagoon is connected naturally by rainfall, that the fish can move in and out. It restores the natural topography, it creates resiliency, and allows the creek to make decisions and adjust and change over time. And by taking away all that fill material and putting it back into the ocean so that it can get transported via the littoral cells down coast, we actually are getting some, near shore sediment benefits, and we're restoring a lot of habitat. The resiliency factor of that is not insignificant. We're just finishing up a study that is looking at how long it will take for the material to move from that placement location and where it would go. And this is a site along PCH right now between Mastro's Point and Coastline, where the shoulder of the road is so threatened that Caltrans is not letting anybody use the road shoulder anymore at this location. And so just to kind of give a visual, this is the current view. If you stand at this location, this is the helipad that exists now. And this is the proposed view. And you'll see that there's actually a new 2-car garage that the lifeguards would be thrilled to have. And the helipad is actually located where this car vehicle is shown. And what's really great about all these helipad locations on the east side of the lagoon is that we can also hook them up to a hydrant. So they become an auxiliary wildfire watering for all the helicopters that are used to fight our fires. All of these improvements also include making the bus stops that exist but are virtually invisible much more visible, to try to encourage people to use buses and bus transportation. And we are proposing to put in additional stairs so that you go right from Topanga Canyon Boulevard straight down to the beach. And we're adding a parking lot that's over on the west side that also provides for additional emergency access. And the Gateway Corner is going to be, I think, a pretty interesting replacement and could be quite beautiful. The intention is to try to get some artwork that is hopefully similar to what has been prepared by Robert Dorme or Mercedes Dorme down in Discovery Park. So it has the opportunity for making parking more accessible to the area of the beach that most people use and creating more parking spaces in that area. State Parks hasn't made a decision yet as to what and whether or not the Ranch Motel could even become economically feasible as low-cost overnight accommodation. We're still in the process of doing that analysis. So we don't know yet what's going to happen to the Ranch Motel, whether it would be used for interpretive services, if what that the use by state parks is really, the program is not really defined as of yet. So just to kind of inspire you, this is what we have now: a narrow bridge, a narrow lagoon, less than an acre. All of the green that you see here is actually dominated by non-native invasives, a lot of arundo, with some native willows and sycamores and alders within here. And we have the opportunity to envision and imagine a different kind of future for this location. And the public comments period for this project is going to start hopefully in January. We're shooting for being able to release the EIR on the 16th of January and start a 60-day maximum public comment period. But that's, we still have a few balls in the air that have to get all tucked in before we can make that happen. But that's the plan. And the idea is to get the EIR finalized by June with a preferred alternative identified so that we can start the next step of the process, which is taking it from where we are now to an actual real design ready to build by December of 2026. And again, thanks to Assemblymember Bloom, we have funds to do that for the bridge in the lagoon. The idea is to, during that time, figure out how we can pay for the construction of the new bridge and the restoration of the lagoon, as well as all of the proposed visitor services, and do the construction. We're saying it could take 5 years just because we want to be most conservative and not sell ourselves short in terms of, we could do it faster than it might happen faster than that, but you never know. And so this is the plan as we have it now. Um, and we're really hoping that folks like you will, sign in, become, get on our email list so you get all the notifications. We're hoping to host a public meeting at the Annenberg Beach House in February, and perhaps another one up at the Topanga Community House also in February. Um, but we really encourage everybody to think about what this means to you and what's important to you, and let us know. Because your comments and direction is what's going to help state parks, beaches and harbors, and Caltrans make a decision as to what direction they should go for this. So with that, I will stop sharing and see if there are any questions that I
I
can
had
answer.
I had one come through just now in the chat from Christian,
Okay.
and the question was about the gas station property on the east side of, I guess, Topanga Canyon Boulevard there.
Right.
What's the status of that property?
So
Who
that
owns
is
that?
that is a private property. It is outside the project area. The project area is totally within public lands. And so the gas station is not included in this project at, at all. However, that being said, they have indicated that they'd kind of like to tie into the sewer if that's where state parks and beaches and harbors go. And so, you know, as we go along and explore that a little bit further to see what might be possible, we'll see whether they participate in that element or not. The sewer is really complicated because in order to make a sewer work, the project area would have to be annexed to the sphere of influence for the Los Angeles County Sanitation District. And that's a very complex process. And that doesn't even get us to actually the complexity of trying to put in a pipe between the project area and Coastline Drive, which is also a pretty challenging thing. Realistically, the Los Angeles Athletic Club was waiting and hoping that LA County would, back in the day, connect the sewer out to Malibu. For those of you who are around then and remember that, the city of Malibu actually incorporated to prevent that from happening. And the area that LA County, I'm sorry, that the LA Athletic Club had was zoned for the density of development that is currently existing at the corner of PCH and Sunset, where there's Gladstones and the Vons and the Taco Bell and the big, commercial building there. And that's what the zoning was for Topanga Lagoon area. And so, when the athletic club realized that the county wasn't going to pay to move a sewer through, that's when they became more interested in selling the property to state parks in 2001. So I think, we'll see what happens with this. Stay tuned. There will be more information forthcoming, but it'll be very challenging to connect to the sewer.
Another question from Carol. What is the historic significance of the motel?
It's actually not the buildings, it's the configuration, it's the shape, that triangular shape that represents a 1930s auto court where you drove your car up to your little cabin and parked next to your cabin and went in. That's what's considered historic. The buildings themselves, not so much.
So they haven't been on any historic register, or there's no move like
No,
that.
they are eligible to be on the historic register of places, but they are not currently.
Another question is, would Arundel be excavated and moved to the ocean along with sediment, or removed by another process?
It would be removed by another process. This, the placement criteria is very strict. This is regulated by the Army Corps of Engineers. And so the only thing that would get placed in the ocean is actual sand, gravel, cobble kinds of stuff. So any vegetation that's going to be removed from the site would be either chopped and composted and dealt with on site, or taken to a local landfill.
Does somebody have their hand raised? I see somebody's.
Yes, I do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Leslie Purcell. Well, I just wanted to say a couple things. I actually lived for a while at the Topanga Ranch Motel in one of the little cottages, and
Oh, how cool.
some of us loved it there. It was, not fancy, but it was really nice and easy enough to run into LA for different meetings and hearings or whatever. So I have a soft spot for that, and actually went to a hearing about when the state parks was taking it over, because there is, a question of coastal access and lower cost visitor serving facilities, including places to stay. And it was essentially in those days a relatively low cost. So I don't know if that's a factor at all in keeping the buildings or not. I mean, I think only state parks is living there now, right? Am I?
Yeah, so there is one of the old cabins that's kind of been restored. That is an employee residence for state parks.
Okay.
None of the others are currently functional. They let me keep my freezer down there for a few years in the old office. Um, and things are not in very good shape at all. But there is, state parks is thinking about it. It's really complicated because when you were living there, it was on a septic system. And that septic system actually kind of discharged right into the creek and the lagoon and the ocean. And I remember back in the early 80s, in the late 80s rather, I was getting calls from when I started the fish research from people saying, oh my gosh, it's a turtle alert in the ocean because things were coming out of those septic systems from there. So now the septic systems are completely gone. And the only thing that's supporting the wastewater needs there are tanks. And those tanks have to be pumped all the time for the businesses. And so anything that state parks does there has to come up to code on wastewater management, which is a big challenge.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Can I ask another question? You were talking about the bridge widening. That's the PCH bridge, right?
correct.
That wow, that's a big deal.
It is a huge deal, but I think I also forgot to mention that one of the criteria we set to the engineers is that all 4 lanes of PCH had to remain open at all times, that
Oh,
they
wow.
could ever shut down a lane of PCH. And so that is a project criteria. And the whole design of the new bridge and the construction of the new bridge is based on that, because there's just no way we could shut down PCH in that area. I mean, it's just way too important a corridor for traffic, as well as emergency evacuation, and as well as for recreation. So that is the requirement. Caltrans will not let us shut down any lanes of PCH ever during this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can I say one more thing? I came in a little bit late on your talk, so hopefully this is recorded and I can look at it. later. But I was friends with John Tommy Roses, who was from the
Yeah.
Tonga tribe, and he used to say that the hilltop small bluff above Topanga Ranch and kind of behind the real inn was a site for them. So I don't know if that's
Well, there are some very sensitive cultural resources in that area. And so the whole design is meant to keep a cap of 2 to 4 feet on top of those. So none of the cultural resources are expected to be impacted at all. The only exception for that is for alternative 4, because we recently, as part of this restoration planning effort, learned that there's some shell midden deposits actually on the south side of PCH, on the DBH portion. And so if alternative 4, so we think that all of those are currently buried under the existing PCH. And so if we realign PCH to the north, that's the only potential area that might be disturbed. But the good news is there were no burials in that area at all.
good.
That is certainly a consideration that State Parks is looking at, and Beaches and Harbors, in terms of that alternative as a pro and a con.
So you're not taking comments at this point, but after
No. Yeah, when we release
outcome-
the environmental impact report, which, as I said, all fingers crossed and all stars align, we're really hoping to do that in mid-January. And at that point, we'd love to have and really welcome and encourage you to please provide your comments. It will really help, and it will really help guide the decision making.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question, what about the seed bank in that sand and gravel and cobble that
So that's actually really interesting. So the top 3 feet of soil on those pads could potentially be contaminated by aerially deposited lead. And so the way we're approaching it is that top 3 feet of soil, we're thinking of it as it's going to be hazardous. It's going to have to go to a hazardous waste facility, that we won't be able to put that into the near shore. And so I don't think there'll be much below 3 feet in terms of seed bank. But whatever is in the seed bank under 3 feet, that would probably go to, be placed into the near shore location and just become biological material that decomposes it, as it moves through and around on the ocean floor.
another question came in. It probably you can't answer this, but it's a question. Which of the 4 alternatives is gaining traction with the agencies?
So, it's really interesting. I don't think one has really risen to the top yet. We designed all 3 of the alternatives to meet all the agency requirements for maintaining traffic on PCH, maintaining the integrity of the existing wetted area so that we don't impact any of the fish, maintaining the surf break. So the regulatory agencies gave us direction from the start, and we've incorporated all of the things that they've asked for into each of those alternatives. And so it's really a matter of, whether or not state parks and beaches and harbors, how they're going to handle their visitor services integration. I think that's going to end up being one of the things that gets considered. And at this point in time, we're still waiting for some information on like the economic feasibility of could the ranch motel even be cost effective at this point in time? And, you know, I think it's once we get that kind of information that they'll be more willing to think about which direction they want to go. And they also really want to hear public comment. So, this has been a pretty transparent process all along, and we've done our best to get as many voices in the room as we possibly can. So I think they are not going to make a final decision until they hear more from the public.
Another question came through. What about current access for Native peoples?
So there is um, uh, there isn't much there in terms of native plant materials that are of interest to or of use that are high priority for the local natives. However, in the restoration plan, all of those plants are being included. But we've had a lot of input from the Gabrielino Tongva, the uh, the Chumash were like just neighbors, and the Tataviam were also just neighbors, but they all kind of mixed around. So we've been in touch with all of them as well. But right now, it's their access is the same as everybody else's access. Um, but they have expressed interest in enhancing the interpretation similarly to, the way like the kelp forest canopy at Malibu Lagoon was, inspired by the Chumash oral tradition about the seven sisters. So those kinds of things are very much on the table for being included over time. Oh, and by the way, Robert Dorme, for those of you who know him, is a local uh, Gabrielino Tongva elder. He is also a musician. And so if you go to the Topanga Lagoon Restoration website, you will see our music video, which he helped us do. And it's 3 minutes. It will make you smile. So whenever you need to pick me up, you can go to that website and see the music video, which includes a lot of Native American input and guidance.
Are there any other questions from attendees that haven't been answered?
I'm just thinking of when I was there. This is Leslie Purcell again. When I was there were a lot of very interesting things that washed up on the beach, fossils and things like that were kind of fascinating. And I don't know if that's any kind of consideration in the plan as to what those things are and how to, protect them if possible from, I don't know. I just crossed my mind.
Well, the good news is that all of the material that would be excavated in order to restore the lagoon, we know is native soil, but it's from the hillsides. It was placed there, and there's very clear horizons that separate the more native material, the beach lagoon, that level from the fill material that was placed in. So the plan is to go down to that boundary. And so I don't think we'd be disturbing anything that, is buried underneath that.
Okay, Carol is asking, you said that funding is in hand for the design phase. Any idea what the price tag will be for construction and where that will come from?
So I don't have an answer for that yet because that's going to depend on what preferred alternative is selected. But the bridge is eligible for the infrastructure funding. And Caltrans is very interested in doing the bridge replacement because The bridge that we have was built in 1933 and is starting to show signs of its age. And they also are mandated to improve fish passage. And so this project is a pretty high priority for Caltrans District 7. And they are talking about a variety of interesting ways to partner with the infrastructure bill to try to fund this, the bridge part, bridge and roadway and lagoon. So how the actual visitor services stuff gets funded, that I don't have as much an answer for. Stay tuned.
Well, I have a question, and you probably, maybe there isn't an answer, but the Malibu Lagoon restoration was contentious, to put it mildly. And do you anticipate a similar public response for Topanga, or do you think that hasn't happened to date, so maybe it's not going to happen?
You know, it's so hard to tell where, you never know. To date, the biggest concerns that we've had raised are making sure we don't touch the surf break, and because the surf break is very important to a lot of people. Some of the neighbors on in the city of Malibu who are on the west of the lagoon, they're not very excited about it because they're concerned that it would affect their properties in some way. Although none of our models suggest that would be the case, and certainly none of what we've observed would suggest that would be the case. So yeah, I'm sure there are people who are not happy about this, but so far there's been not the same level of organized kind of response to in the negative. I would say there's been more of a response in the positive of people who see this as an amazing opportunity to restore, one of the unique, it's one of the only places left in Southern California that is sufficiently in public lands and ownership that we actually can do a restoration and get a functional lagoon back. That's not possible in many places because so much of those areas adjacent, like, are in private property, which is really a very big challenge. Um, so, so we'll see.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Rosie, for I'm really excited to see this progress that has been made, because I did attend some of the earlier sessions, I don't know, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. So I look forward to any future meetings and taking a look at what all those seemed like there's some really good alternatives there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we did our best to take everything that everybody's wish list and put them into at least one of the alternatives. But if you go to our website, there is a presentation that goes into a bit more detail than what I've done here. And it's recorded and from the meeting we did in June. And so you're welcome to go and take a look at that. That'll give you a bit more detail than what I went into tonight.
Another question came in about the if the lagoon is freshwater, saltwater, or a
Mix.
mix.
Yeah, it's actually dominantly fresh water. Um, Unlike Malibu, we don't get very much tidal influence because the lagoon is perched a little bit higher elevationally. And so even when the lagoon is connected, there's more water going, fresh water from the creek going out than there is salt water from the ocean coming in. So we've been monitoring the salinity in the lagoon since about on and off since 2000. And I think our highest salinity we've ever recorded was 11. The ocean is 34. Just so it's usually down in the 0 to 1.
Well, all the changes, let's say you did alternative 2, would that then change that salinity? Would it be,
No,
would
it
it
wouldn't,
would still be the
because
same
it would be
topography?
the same. It would, because we're not touching the beach face, where everything happens upstream of the beach face. So the connectivity will be pretty much the way it is now.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And it would only be, the connection would only be through storm events. There's no imported water in the Topanga Creek watershed, such as what you get in Malibu, for example. There's no Tapia sewage treatment plant upstream. And so, what happens in Topanga Creek and Lagoon is still the natural hydrologic regime that's been there forever. So and that doesn't change at all.
All right, folks. Any other questions for Rosie before we end the session? If not, thank you so much, Rosie. I look forward to seeing you sometime in January or February, huh?
Well, I hope so. And thank you guys all so much. And it's lovely to see a lot of familiar names on the Zoom. So I'm sorry I'm not seeing all your faces, but wishing you all a lovely holiday season. Happy solstice. And we'll catch up in 2024.
And this is being recorded and it will be posted on our website. So if you missed part of it. All right, thanks, Rosie. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.